Hello, everyone. My name is Brian Ulaszewski. As Steve sort of introduced, I am the executive director of FABRICK, and we are a nonprofit urban design, planning, and policy studio in Long Beach. And I'm here to talk a little bit about the public right-of-way and how its design affects how we use it and ultimately our quality of life. And we'll explore some options or opportunities for exploring alternatives for our public right-of-way. And we'll start off with a primer. This is the public right-of-way. It's the land that exists between our homes, our schools, our places of work, the places we frequent. It's made up of streets, sidewalks, medians, parkways, the street lights and trees, the sewer lines and storm drains, and the way it is designed affects how we use it. The width of the street, from the width of the street, and how fast we drive, or our willingness to cross it as a pedestrian, or the conditions of the sidewalk and our comfort walking down it. And so it's a really big deal because if you look across a city, it makes up 25% of our land area. Crisscrossing the city, the public right-of-way makes up over 12 square miles of land area. And to visualize it a little bit differently, imagine it as New York Central Park 9 times over throughout the city. And I bring that up because it's open space. It's public open space. And while it is a street, it's also places where people congregate, people live along. And so let's just be conscious of how we use that space and how it affects the people that are living and working around it. And so there are streets that are designed for cars. This is Martin Luther King between 6th Street and 7th Street in front of the Museum of Latin American Art. It's obviously designed as a street for cars. It's wide. It's got plenty of lanes. It's for boating as a pedestrian or bicyclist to cross. But 3 blocks away is a street called Toledo Walk, and it's actually a pedestrian-only right-of-way for about 1.5 blocks. It's got a walkway down the middle with bungalows and craftsman homes on either side of it and a vintage streetlights down the middle of it. And so you get a wide variety of how the right-of-way is designed. And so you look at 2nd Street, it's designed for everyone in that you have a street that carries a lot of cars very efficiently, yet there's sidewalks on either side that are great for strolling, for dining, for socializing, and there's also very well utilized bike infrastructure. And just small things can affect the character of that right-of-way. This is Henderson Street in central Long Beach, and it has, for about 1 block, it had a dirt shoulder where it looks like an alley. You look at the picture, and people are driving their cars and parking it right up in front of apartment buildings. But simply add a sidewalk and parkway, it completely changes the character of the street, and people are more apt to walk along it. People change their parking habits, although they shouldn't be parking in the front lawn, but they parallel park instead. And so what we're going to do is explore some ways that we can look at the public right-of-way a little differently. And in this example, this is a temporary intervention that we've done, as you and I can do just about any day, is that, well, maybe not any day, but just pushing out the sidewalk with pots and plants. This is in the East Village for a day event. We extended the sidewalk and had the adjacent business owners put their dining outside in this new area, and it became a great space for both the business to succeed as well as a social space. And a few months later, what happened was the city had just basic road improvements that they had to do, curb and gutter repairs, new wheelchair ramps and streetlights. And so what they did was they actually made those curb extensions permanent. It was actually the first couple pictures you saw, and we added about 3,000 square feet of new sidewalk area, which cut down the crossing distance for pedestrians, but didn't impact traffic flow, and more importantly for everybody is that it didn't lose any parking stalls. So, but looking on the other side of the coast, there's other examples of temporary improvements, temporary interventions. This is in New York, where they're using pots and plants, paint, and tables and chairs to transform streets into pedestrian plazas. This is perhaps the most famous example. This is in Times Square, where they shut down about 6 blocks of Broadway and turned it into pedestrian plazas. And it's been so successful for the businesses and for the district that they're actually going to make that permanent by extending the sidewalk and adding new trees and kiosks and benches. And other cities are actually taking key from this example, including San Francisco and most recently in Los Angeles. Coming back to Long Beach, we've been exploring new interventions as well with what's called a parklet. It's basically an extension of the sidewalk using decking, and you can fill it with dining, with seating, basically a space for socializing in commercial districts that didn't really have the sidewalks that were wide enough to facilitate that activity. And so basically what happens is you just build a deck into 1 or 2 parking spaces, similar to what's that's already taking place on Pine Avenue and 2nd Street, just using concrete. And the good thing about this is that, you know, if the business goes away or if there's major road work, that this can actually be taken away. Now, going up a little bit in size and perhaps, well, certainly much more permanent is, this should be familiar, this is that same block of Martin Luther King between 6th and 7th Street. This is the Armory Park proposal that we've been working on, where it's to consolidate a complicated series of intersections into, at 6th Street, 7th Street, Martin Luther King, and Alamitos, which will actually improve traffic flow and create about an acre's worth of park space by vacating that length of Martin Luther King. And what it also does on top of those 2 things is it actually removes the most dangerous intersection in the city. It has the 2nd most number of accidents at 7th and Martin Luther King, and it has over 2/3 of them are broadside collisions. And so what we're looking at right now is the cities actually won a pair of grants for about $3.5 million, which will pay for the street realignment and the new park. And so we should be breaking ground later this year on the street work with the design and the development of the park to come soon thereafter. Getting a little bit larger, we're going to talk a little bit about freeways, the big infrastructure. Crisscrossing Southern California, the land of freeways. What some of you might not know is while we have the 405, the 710, the 605, we were actually at one point supposed to have a freeway along 7th Street, along PCH. The Terminal Island Freeway in West Long Beach was supposed to go all the way to East LA, but fortunately for Long Beach, we didn't have those sort of disrupting our neighborhoods for simple freeway expansions. And so this is West Long Beach. This is the Terminal Island Freeway, the last mile of it between PCH and Willow. Some of you might be familiar with it. It carries about 14,000 vehicles a day. Over 1/3 of them are trucks carrying cargo from the port complex to the rail yard at to a rail yard at the end of Willow, at the end of the Terminal Island Freeway at Willow. And it carries 14,000 vehicles, and 5,000 more are trucks. And the problem is that this is a view from a recess area. There's 5,600 students at a half dozen campuses along this freeway. And they're exposed to the air, noise, and visual pollution of these trucks every day. And so, but there's an opportunity to look at something else. 14,000 vehicles sounds like a lot of traffic, but 4th Street and Retro Row carries the same amount of traffic. 1 lane in either direction, center turn lane, parallel parking, sidewalks, street trees, a much more vibrant environment for pedestrian movement, for bike movement, even for cars. Not a noticeable traffic issue there, but there's vibrant commercial activity and neighborhoods on either side. And so there's an opportunity to reimagine something less than a freeway. And a lot of cities across the nation have done this. This is a freeway in this is a central freeway in San Francisco, carried 90,000 vehicles a day. 6 times as many as that length of the Terminal Island Freeway. And after the '89 earthquake, it was significantly damaged, and instead of repairing it, they replaced it with a multi-lane boulevard, similar in character to Ocean Boulevard or Bellflower or Lakewood near the airport. And the excess land from the off-ramps and on-ramps and overpasses were instead turned into opportunities for economic development and public assets, including this park space. This park space was at the terminus of the Central Freeway. It's an incredibly vibrant park surrounded by a vibrant neighborhood, commercial district, and it's filled with people each and every day. And you ask just about any resident in that neighborhood, and while there is traffic on that boulevard, they would keep that traffic for what they got out of it. But luckily, Long Beach doesn't have to make those choices. We're talking about 14,000 vehicles. And actually, the rail yard that is served by that freeway, those 5,000 or so trucks that serve that freeway, they're proposing to move their trucks to the Alameda corridor a mile away, further away from schools and homes, much more appropriately located between refineries and recycling facilities. And so instead of 14,000 vehicles, we're talking about more like 9,000 vehicles, more like a neighborhood scale street, something like Broadway at Nieto, where they added those broad medians, or 3rd Street through Alamedos Beach, where they actually got rid of a car lane to add bike lanes. And so we don't need a freeway to carry that amount of traffic. And so the idea would be to end the freeway at PCH right here, and instead, and have all the trucks end at that where they can actually still serve the industrial areas along PCH. And north of PCH, which is actually that portion of that freeway right-of-way is owned by the city, turn it into a street that actually integrates into the neighborhood street grid. And what that does, it acts as a pressure relief valve on Santa Fe, the only north-south street through that portion of the neighborhood, so it actually reduces congestion in the area. So we're talking about removing a freeway that reduces congestion, reduces public health impacts, and because the cross-section of a street is much narrower than a freeway, we end up with 20 to 30 acres worth of public land that could then become a public asset or an opportunity for economic development. And so where we are right now is the city applied for a grant to do a community-based plan to study a future without this freeway and what they would like to see in return. And so what we end up with is instead of a freeway carrying trucks behind our schools and our communities and our neighborhoods, we end up with more of a neighborhood scale street with potentially park space on one side and schools on the other that are much better, that's a much better scale for that community. And so there's plenty of opportunities like this across the city, and we just brought up a few of them. Our organization will be doing many more of these, and we'll focus on these as you saw. And so I thank you for your time. I thank you for the organizers of TEDx, and I thank you, all the community partners and city partners that have helped make all this work possible. Thank you.